Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into, well, a really fascinating figure from antiquity, someone who, despite being largely unknown to us now, was just this towering intellect back then, a complete man, they called him. We're talking about Posidonius of Apamea, a Stoic philosopher, yes, but his life and his massive body of work offer some incredible insights, especially into navigating this unpredictable world we live in.
It's true. And what's really striking when you look at the sources is Posidonius wasn't just a philosopher sitting and thinking. Not in that narrow sense, anyway. He was a true polymath, seamlessly blending science, politics, and these really deep observations about human nature. So our mission today really is to unpack the key nuggets of knowledge, maybe some surprising facts from the sources we have on his life, and show you why his wisdom, well, it still feels incredibly relevant.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning then. Posidonius, born 135 BC, modern-day Syria, came from a prominent family, right? But he enters this world, this time he later called one of anxious abundance and political turmoil, too.
Exactly. And that kind of environment, lacking strong leadership, full of the dangers of excess and greed, it seems like almost the perfect breeding ground for Stoicism, much like it was for Zeno and Cleanthes before him, actually. It seems to have taught Posidonius a really early, really crucial lesson. In a world you can't predict, the only thing you can truly manage is yourself, that territory between our ears.
And he definitely looked back with disapproval, didn't he, at that abundance in Syria. He talked about people being free from the bother of the necessities of life, which sounds good, but he says it led to a continual life of feasting and almost even gymnasia turned into baths. He also noted the drunken ambition of local tyrants. It really sounds like his point was that these good times rarely make for great people or great governments.
Yeah, that seems to be the takeaway. And maybe that's why he essentially voted with his feet, as they say. Left his home around, 18 or 20, headed for Athens. And it's there he finds the Stoic school under Panetius. Now, Panetius was this huge figure educating Rome's elite, basically. But even among those, star pupils, the sources suggest young Posidonius' brilliance really must have stood out. He saw something wasn't right back home, and he went looking for something better, something more challenging.
Okay, but here's where it gets, for me, really interesting. The sheer scope of the man. Sources paint him as this, well, astonishing polymath. Interests in everything. Natural history, astronomy, meteorology, oceanography, geography, geology, seismology, ethnography, mathematics, geometry, logic, history, ethics. It's staggering. They called him the greatest polymath since Aristotle. How does one person even do that back then?
That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the sources hint that it was likely Panetius, his teacher, who had traveled a lot himself. It seems Panetius really encouraged Posidonius to take his studies out into the world, not just stay in Athens. And boy, did he. He spent a huge chunk of his life studying in these far-flung places: Italy, Sicily, Greece, Dalmatia, North Africa, the Near East. He's out there measuring tides in Spain, doing ethnographic research on the Celts and Gaul. This wasn't just reading scrolls, it was field work.
Wow. And he wasn't just looking, he was measuring. A keen observer and a lover of data, diligently recording everything. I mean, attempting to measure the circumference of the Earth, the size and distance of the sun and moon, creating actual models. It's just mind-boggling given the pretty crude tools they must have had.
Yeah. It really is astounding. And this relentless travel, this unmatched curiosity, it genuinely expanded the understanding of the known universe at the time, dramatically so.
Yeah.
He was literally, as you said, down in the dirt and out on the water, collecting that primary data. Seneca later wrote that Posidonius lived as if the whole world was a temple of the gods, which I think is beautiful. And it highlights this key Stoic idea, right, that you can and probably should be interested in everything, learn from every experience, which maybe paradoxically leads to humility. Because the more you learn, the more you see how much you don't know. It's a powerful lesson, that intellectual humility.
Right. And unlike, say, Epicureanism, which often encouraged turning away from public life, Posidonius, like a good Stoic, he absolutely turned his intellect towards politics and governance too. Why was that practical engagement so important?
Well, it's sort of baked into Stoicism itself, isn't it? This idea that wisdom isn't just theory, it has to be lived, applied. His travels, for instance, brought him into constant contact with Roman legions. So what does he do? He studies troop movements, military history, local customs. He even gathered intelligence for Roman generals, apparently, wrote a whole manual on military tactics, the kind of art of war. And the sources say it was so detailed it was considered too advanced for anyone but a general. So he really embodied that ideal of the complete man, explorer, strategist, scientist, politician. He was in that sense a real philosopher, engaged with the messy reality.
Okay, so after all this travel, He eventually settles down
Right, right,
in
right.
Rhodes, right, and rises to become Prytany, the chief magistrate, basically for a period. And his political duties then take him to Rome in 86 BC. And that's where he has this really stark encounter. His curiosity leads him to the deathbed of Marius, one of Rome's, well, worst strongmen, who's apparently delusional, tortured by dark dreams. What did Posidonius take from that?
Yeah, the sources say Posidonius, ever the keen observer, was just repulsed by what he saw. Marius dies a few days later, still raving about leading troops. And Posidonius contrasts this, implicitly or explicitly, with the peaceful death of a philosopher like Antipater, who apparently spent his last moments counting his blessings. It really throws up that question for all of us, for you listening. If you truly saw with that kind of success, that kind of raw power really looks like up close what it does to people,
Mm-hmm.
would you still chase it so hard?
And his later writings seem full of these observations about the cost of ambition, these insatiable appetites. He wrote about Athenian, remember? A philosopher who becomes a tyrant, throws away his genius chasing mob approval, and Demophilus, a slave of luxury and malpractice who meets a violent and painful end. He clearly saw a connection.
Absolutely. What linked them all, in Posidonius's view, was this fundamental deficiency of character. It reminds you of Marcus Aurelius later, right? Robbers, perverts, killers, and tyrants gather for your inspection their so-called pleasures.
Mm-hmm.
The insight Posidonius passes down from watching these lives unfold is just timeless. Be wary of ambition, avoid the mob. Luxury rots you, just like power does. His conclusion on Marius is so powerful. Marius commanded armies, but ambition commanded Marius. The real command, the real freedom, is mastering yourself, not others.
So after Panaetius dies, Posidonius actually leaves Athens. He felt the people there had become a mindless mob. Now, he definitely held some aristocratic views, but it sounds like his suspicion of populism came from, well, firsthand experience. That must have shaped his philosophy, too.
Oh, undoubtedly. And his philosophy, because it was so grounded, in natural science and history and psychology, it was highly sought after by the biggest names of his day, including Pompey the Great, the famous general. There's that story from 66 BC. Pompey asks Posidonius for advice, and Posidonius quotes Homer, "Be the best and always superior to others."
Which sounds, well, it sounds a bit odd for a Stoic, doesn't it? Superior to others. Sounds like exactly the kind of external thing they usually warn against. Did Pompey just misunderstand?
Well, that seems to be the interpretation. Pompey, with his described insane love of a false glory, probably heard what he wanted to hear. He missed the subtlety. Because for the Stoics, and surely for Posidonius, being best wasn't about winning battles or collecting honors or lording it over people. It meant virtue, excellence in the things you actually control, your thoughts, your actions, your choices, that internal battlefield. And Posidonius didn't just talk about it.
No, he really lived it. That story from 62 BC, Pompey returns, now at the absolute height of his power. Comes to Posidonius' house, bows low, has his army standards lowered in respect, and Posidonius, he's laid up in bed, suffering terribly from arthritis and gout. But he gives Pompey a private lecture right there on why only the honorable is good. And apparently, even while crying out in pain, he stressed that he would still not admit that pain was an evil. That triumph over pain, over oneself, that's the best Posidonius meant, isn't it?
That's powerful.
It's incredibly powerful. And he also had this idea, maybe a bit radical for Stoics at the time. He thought the mind, the rational part, naturally seeks wisdom and the truly good. But these lower parts of the soul, they're always pulling towards power, glory, bodily pleasure. So he believed good habits, a good lifestyle, consciously set by the mind, were crucial checks against these irrational drives. Yeah, that inner battle, it reminds me of Martin Luther King Jr.'s phrase, the civil war between the north and south of our souls. It just rings true, doesn't it, if you have any self-awareness at all? So the real question is which side you choose to align with to turn yourself over to. Posidonius urged us, design one's life, to live contemplating the truth and order of the universe and promoting it as much as possible, being led in no respect by the irrational part of the soul, which is, let's be honest, really, really hard to do. But what a challenge, right?
It is a lifelong challenge. He also gave us this great new analogy for philosophy itself. Earlier Stoics used that farm analogy, logic, the fence, physics, the soil, ethics, the fruit. Posidonius said, no, philosophy should be like a living being. Physics is the blood and flesh, logic the bones and sinews, and ethics is the soul. It's just a perfect metaphor, isn't it? Because philosophy is meant to be lived, embodied like a human being, not just dissected.
And he took that idea, sympathia, cosmic connection, even further too, didn't he? Building on earlier Stoics, he saw the whole cosmos as the single sentient living thing, everything interconnected. And interestingly, his scientific work, his observations, they actually reinforced his sense of, well, A creator and a kind of providential fate.
Exactly. And that led to this profound insight. Every single human being is, as he put it, quite literally on the same team.
Hmm.
We're all tied together in this cosmic sympathy. We're not these isolated, self-sufficient units. We each have a role within this large body, this cosmos. Existing together in collaboration, yes, but also in tension sometimes. It really changes how you see your place.
So in his later years, Posidonius dedicated himself to finishing his great histories. 52 volumes, apparently, a third of everything he wrote. Plus, works on fate, ethics, emotions, anger, grief, duty, and loads of scientific books based on all those travels and observations. The sheer output is just immense.
It truly is. And even though, sadly, only fragments survive today, and he's mostly unknown to the general public,
Mm.
he was an absolutely towering figure in his own time for centuries afterwards. I mean, St. Augustine was still engaging with him, calling him out by name 500 years later, even if it was just to critique his use of astrology.
So this man worked and lived across the whole known world, Syria, Athens, Rome, Rhodes, traveled constantly, wrote incredibly widely, advised the most powerful men. He really was, you have to say, one of the smartest men of the ancient world.
No doubt about it. He died peacefully in 51 BC, aged 84. We don't have a specific account of his final moments like we do for Marius, but you can easily imagine him. You imagine he learned enough from life and from philosophy to depart the world a happier, more grateful man than the tormented figure he'd witnessed in Rome. But still, even geniuses are forgotten eventually. Everyone is mortal. That's a truth no Stoic, and certainly not Posidonius, would ever argue with.
So there you have it, Posidonius. The forgotten genius who seems to have truly lived that Stoic ideal. Engage fully with the world, but master yourself first and foremost. From his scientific deep dives to his sharp political insights, his profound philosophical contributions, he really pushed the boundaries of what it meant to be informed and to live wisely.
Yeah, what we've hopefully shown in this deep dive is just how powerful that deep engagement with the world can be. Looking at its science, its politics, its human drama,
Hmm.
all of that can fuel really profound personal wisdom and philosophical insight. Posidonius is this great reminder that, chasing knowledge isn't just about stacking up facts. It's about understanding what it all means for how we actually live our lives.
So maybe as you go about your week, think about Posidonius a little. How might his insistence on being interested in, well, everything change how you look at things? Or his idea of that inner battle, that constant choice we face, how might that affect how you approach the information and the challenges in your own life? Definitely something to mull over.